Chapter 1, September 5th, 2015. "Ally, have you seen my shoes?" Alys Dewitt rolled her eyes. "Did you check under the bed?" Her younger sister, Regina, was constantly losing something. They both sat in Regina's chamber, wearing their undergarments covered by a silk robe. If it wasn't one thing, her sister would make something up, so the attention would fall back to where she believed it belonged, on her. Alice plopped down into one of the fancy retro chairs next to the window and pulled a nail file from her overstuffed purse. She slid it across her nails to even them out. Maybe she would get lucky, and Regina would find her shoes without asking for help. "You can help me, you know," Regina whined. "You are my maid of honour." No such luck. With a sigh, she dropped the nail file back in her purse. She should have known better. Regina couldn't do anything on her own. Drama queen. Her sister put the very idea to shame. Men loved her, though. They weren't able to look past her perfect frame and flawless heart-shaped face. That Regina's face was draped with platinum blonde hair and aquamarine eyes didn't hurt, and was enough to give Alice a complex. Her perfect sister. In truth, Alice was tired of people comparing them. She was content with how she looked and her life choices. So what if she was still single, and her sister appeared to have found the man of her dreams? Some day she'd find a man worth spending the rest of her life with, and if she didn't, well, that was perfectly fine too. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. Complex. Ugh, okay, I may have one. "I'm more than aware of my status in your wedding." The person in charge of making sure she showed up and radiated her perceived perfectness. Just because she organised things down to the last detail didn't mean she should have to do it. Her sister was lucky she loved her. She pasted a bright smile on her face and turned toward Regina. "I can't wait to watch you walk down the aisle and marry Trenton." Alice couldn't wait for this wedding to be over with. She loved her sister, honestly, but her attitude grated on her nerves. Regina's spoiled princess demeanour drove her insane. Alice could only spend so much time with her before she felt her fingers start to twitch. A desire to wrap them around her sister's neck and squeeze filled her, and it took all of her self-control not to act on it. "You don't look very happy about it. Don't you want to be part of my wedding?" Regina pouted. "Your fists are clenched at your side and you've been bitchier than usual." Alice tilted her head heavenward, silently praying for patience. She turned her attention to her overwrought sister. "I promise I want to be part of your big day." She crossed her heart and blew her a kiss. "Now think, where was the last place you saw your shoes? For once, please remember," so she wouldn't have to mess up her own hair digging around for her sister's shoes. Regina bit her lip, and a small tear slid down her cheek. "I don't know." Alice took a deep breath and braced herself for the stream of tears about to descend. "It will be fine, Gina. Let me take a look. I'm sure they're here." She crossed the room and patted her on the back. Alice turned and scanned the room. No, her shoes weren't any place obvious. It appeared as if she'd have to do some serious searching. "Thank you." Regina's voice wobbled. "You are the best sister, truly." That's what she was to everyone, the one they could always depend on. What would they do if she suddenly disappeared? Maybe she should. Teach them all they would have to learn to do for themselves sometimes. Alice couldn't really do it, though. Meanness, along with selfishness, wasn't her go-to attitude. That was what made people lean on her so much. She was an easy target to get roped into doing everything. She walked around the room and looked under the furniture. No shoes. There was only one place left to check. Alice headed toward the closet. Alice sat down in the walk-in closet and rifled through a pile of clothes. She tossed them to the other side in an effort to reach the bottom. Of course, lying in the middle of it all was a pair of white stilettos, with clear crystals decorating the toes and along the side. Regina loved shoes, and allowed everyone to choose their own style for the wedding. Alice had a similar pair, a bridesmaid gift from her sister. Her reasoning for the modern footwear was no one would see them under their long gowns. Everything else was Regency period accurate for the wedding. She couldn't believe how careless Regina was being with her wedding attire. If it were her wedding, she'd have taken better care of her shoes. Looking perfect for her big day would top her list, along with meeting her intended in front of everyone and saying her vows. Regina tended to be a tad unorganised. Why would she need to keep track of her belongings when she had everyone else doing it for her? "Found them!" she called out from the back of the closet. "You hid them from yourself under a pile of clothes." Alys grabbed the shoes and stood. She left the closet and found her sister sitting on the edge of the bed, a forlorn expression on her face. "Hey, are you all right?" Alys rubbed her shoulder. "What's bothering you?" "Do you think I'm making a mistake?" "Oh, honey, it's not my place to say." Was her sister having doubts? Didn't all brides on some level? How could she make it better for her? "You love Trenton, don't you?" "I do." Good, that gave her something to work with. "Then what's the real issue?" "I always jump in without thinking. When he proposed, I said yes before he finished asking me. I was so excited and could already see how our future would go. But now—" Regina bit her lip. "I think I may have feelings for somebody else." "Oh, dear." "Who?" Alys waved her hand, dismissing her question. "Never mind, I don't want to know. Let me put it like this. When you close your eyes, who do you picture as the man you want to grow old with, build a family with, and wake up each day to their face lying next to yours?" Regina closed her eyes. Her face remained calm and unmoving, lips parted as she breathed in and out. "Trenton." A soft smile formed on her beautiful face. "I see him with me each day." "Then you don't need to worry about your choice. You've already made it." Thank God. If Regina cancelled the wedding, Alys didn't want to think about the backlash from it. Her mother, bless her heart, would be apoplectic. Crisis diverted, she needed Regina to finish dressing for her upcoming nuptials. "I'm sorry I'm such a mess." Alys smiled. "From what I understand, these feelings are quite normal." She sat on the bed next to her sister and pulled her into a hug. "Now I think we need to fix your makeup and get you into that lovely gown you picked out." Regina rested her head on Alys's shoulder. "I know, you're right, but can we sit here for a minute?" Alys wanted to give her whatever she desired, but they couldn't stay in their current position for very long. The wedding was scheduled to start in a half-hour. If they were going to be ready on time, they would have to start moving. "Of course." Alys rubbed her arm. "Only a moment, though. Mamma will come barrelling in any minute and go a little cray-cray at the sight of us. Neither of us is ready." Regina sighed. "Let's get me ready." Alys stood up and held her hand out to her sister. "Come on, go sit at your vanity. Time to make you even more beautiful than you already are." Regina sat and started fixing her face. Alys went to the closet and grabbed both of their dresses and laid them across the bed. She settled herself next to Regina at the vanity, watching her apply her makeup. Her hair had been arranged earlier in a perfect chignon with curls framing her face. After more than 30 minutes, her sister sighed and set down her makeup brush and turned toward her. Alys shrugged. At least her sister hadn't taken as long as she usually did to put on makeup. This maid of honour thing was not something she wanted to experience ever again. Regina was her only sister, so chances of it happening again were slim. "I'm ready to get dressed now," Regina stated. "Good, I have your dress right here." Alys held up the Regency-inspired wedding gown. Her sister had decided on a themed wedding. They were all to wear period dresses or suits, even the guests. Alys loved her dress. It had a high empire waist with lace along the edge of the bodice and intricate beading at the base of the skirt. The fabric was silky and shone in a brilliant, pure white. The bridesmaid dresses were similar, but in varied shades. Alys's dress was a brilliant emerald. Regina wanted to dress Alys in a colour to match her eyes, and she approved of the choice. When she tried it on, complete bliss overtook her. Alys helped her sister into her gown and helped her tie the sash around the front. It all had to be historically accurate. No zippers for any of the wedding party. Lucky for Alys, hers slipped on and only had a few ties under the bodice. A complicated dress would have made getting out of it rather difficult, considering she didn't have a groom to help her out of it at the end of the evening. "All ready," Alys smiled. "It's time to go downstairs." Regina nodded and wound her arm around Alys's. They left the room and descended the stairs. Their father awaited them at the bottom, along with the best man, Bradford Kendall, the current Duke of Weston. He also happened to be Trenton's stepbrother. The wedding was taking place on his estate in Kent. Alys sucked in a breath at the sight of him in his period attire. The man was gorgeous. There was no other word for it. His jet-black hair was brushed back, and his dark blue eyes shot upward as he watched them walk down. To be accurate, he watched Regina. Could he be the other man her sister had feelings for? They reached the bottom. Their father kissed them each on the cheek. "You both look lovely." He looped his arm around theirs, one of them on each side of him. "You ready for a wedding?" "I am," Regina giggled. Bradford joined them, his gaze never leaving Regina's face. "It's a beautiful day for one. Every seat is filled." "I can't wait to marry Trenton." Alys watched Bradford. He sucked in a harsh breath at her sister's words. The Duke had feelings for Regina, and that would make for some awkward family dinners. She frowned. It was too bad, really. The man could have any woman he wanted, except Regina. And now, well, her. Alys didn't want a man besotted with her sister. "Yes, but you should let Bradford and I go on before you. Why don't you spend a few minutes with Daddy while we walk to the church?" Alys wanted to put some distance between the two of them. If Bradford was given an inch, he'd try to talk Regina out of marrying his brother. She couldn't allow him to destroy her sister's wedding. "We will be patiently waiting to see you walk down the aisle." "I don't—" Bradford started to say, but stopped when Alys pinched his side, hard. He glared at her, his eyes promising retribution. "Leave Regina alone," Alys whispered. "She needs some quality time with our father. We have other things to take care of." She looped her arm around his and raised an eyebrow. "What are you waiting for? You're to escort me down the aisle, right?" "Archaic," he grumbled. "I can't fathom why she wanted such an old-fashioned wedding." They exited the house and headed toward the church located on the estate. Alys shrugged. "I don't know. I find it rather charming." "You would," he replied, sarcasm in his voice. Alys stopped in her tracks and stared up at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" He tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "You have a romantic heart, and probably comes from all that whimsical romance you bury yourself in." Heat filled her cheeks. "So what you're saying is, because I read romance novels, I have unhealthy expectations?" How dare he? He didn't even know her. They were barely acquaintances. To think she thought he was handsome when they first met. Way to ruin her fantasies. She should thank him for the wake-up call. For a brief moment she'd considered him a possibility. Rogues were all fine and good in romance novels. In real life they were such a letdown. Only in make-believe were they redeemable. This man left a bad taste in her mouth. So what if she'd been searching for a rogue of her own for some time now? It was time to wake up and realise she'd never find one worth fighting for. "Your words, not mine." He shrugged. "I think we need to keep moving." What an ass. Because I want a man to love me doesn't mean I have unreasonable expectations. She wanted to punch him and break his perfect nose. "Love is for fools." Wait, that meant he didn't love her sister. "So what about your feelings for Regina?" A deep-throated chuckle filled the air. "Oh, sweetheart, that's not love. It's lust, pure and simple." He needed to be taken down a peg or three. Some day you will meet someone who takes your breath away, your very existence moot without them by your side. Every breath, every heartbeat will be only for them. If you're lucky enough, they will feel the same. Either way, I hope I'm around to see you fall. It will be a damned beautiful sight, the great Duke of Weston on his knees before a mere woman. He pinned her in place with a scathing look. Such striking blue eyes. Not bloody likely. Alys smirked. Maybe not. Still, it would be amusing to watch. Bradford stared down at her with condescension. He tilted his head to the side as he studied her. His lips twitched and formed one of his cocky smiles. Whatever light bulb had gone off inside his head, Alys did not know, but she didn't like how he was looking at her. Tell me, Alys, have you ever been in the gallery on my estate? Where was he going with this? No, I've only been here since yesterday. Not a lot of time for a tour. You do have a very large home. Pity. He glanced down at her through hooded eyes. You might have seen something interesting in there. Like what? Bradford was confusing her. He wasn't flirting, but he wasn't exactly being standoffish either. Alys didn't know what game he was playing, and didn't really care either. She was putting a stop to it before it went any further. I'm sure it has a lot of lovely art, but I'm not generally drawn to pretty pictures. Books, on the other hand, were a craving she couldn't kick. Oh, it isn't a bunch of pretty pictures. Most of them are of my family. The man was talking foolishness. Why would she care about portraits of his family? Alys shrugged. I'm failing to follow your logic. His lips tilted into an evil grin. You remind me of someone in the portraits. Uncanny, really. Remind me later and maybe I will take the time to show you. Was this his version of let me show you my etchings? Alys wasn't going to fall for his plans of seduction. She wasn't born yesterday. No thanks. I won't be staying long enough to bother. They had stopped just outside the church. The walk over had been enlightening. As far as Alys was concerned, she wouldn't be repeating it. Bradford was a conundrum she didn't want to figure out. Soon Regina would be married to his stepbrother. Alys wouldn't have to deal with him, but she hoped her sister knew what she was getting into. Bradford might just come between her and Trenton. He didn't seem like the type of man to step aside willingly. Suit yourself. He opened the church door and led her inside. Is Regina on her way? Her mother rushed to their side. It's time to start. Yes, she's coming over with Daddy. She should be here any minute. Go ahead and let them begin. Bradford and I can head down now. Her mother didn't say a word and left them at the end of the aisle. The music started as Regina and her father entered the church. Bradford wound her arm around his, and together they marched down the aisle. They took their places and waited for the bride. Regina came down the aisle with their father, tears falling down her cheeks as she approached Trenton. They said their vows, all of it a blur. Soon the wedding came to an end and they were leaving the church. A reception was scheduled to immediately follow the nuptials. Alys shook her head. For some reason everything swam before her. A hammer seemed to pound against her skull. Something wasn't right. She needed her purse. She'd have something in there to help whatever was going on. If she could get through the day, she could spend a week in bed if necessary. Please let me see Regina's wedding until the end. Alys followed everyone out blindly. She wanted a few minutes to herself. Maybe she could take a breath and find that time inside the manor. The people around her suffocated her, and she still couldn't get over Bradford's attitude. He would have ruined Regina's wedding for a brief affair. Who was this man? How had he come to discard love so easily? Jaded, cynical, and one of the current rogues in England. Dover, to be more precise. Bradford did what he wanted and didn't give it a second thought. Alys shouldn't have been surprised at his words, yet she couldn't help feeling disappointed at the same time. He was right about one thing. Alys did read a lot. She loved romance novels and had a soft spot for the rogues written on the pages. She wanted a rogue of her own, provided he left his scandalous past behind and promised to love her forever. That's part of what had attracted her to Bradford. He'd reminded her of a romantic hero. Too bad he turned out to be a bad seed all around, and in love with her sister. He claimed he only lusted after her, but Alys didn't believe it was just that. The Duke had protested too much. Bradford wasn't the rogue for her. Maybe someday she would get her wish and find the rogue meant only for her. Doubtful. She walked up to her room and grabbed her heavy purse, sliding the strap over her shoulder. It had everything she could possibly need in it. If she could have taken it down the aisle with her, she would have. It relieved her to have it with her. Alys liked to be in control as much as possible. She hated to be unprepared for anything. So she carried a purse filled with items that could potentially solve any problem that might arise. Not everything was so easily fixed, she knew that, but it didn't stop her from trying. Her purse was a kind of security blanket. It made her feel like she could do anything. Plus, it had one very important item inside. Her reading tablet. I better get down to the reception before someone misses me. Once outside, she breathed in the fresh air. The cliffs alongside the large manor were breathtaking. Maybe she could take a minute to enjoy the sea before returning to the party. She made a beeline toward the cliff's edge. When she got there, she stopped and absorbed the view. So beautiful. As much as she loved it, though, she had obligations she needed to see to. Her sister would never forgive her if she bailed on the rest of her big day. Alys turned, took 2 steps, and stopped. Was that a white rabbit at the edge? The poor thing was going to fall off. Maybe she should shoo it away. Alys, dazed, stumbled toward it. It was so blurred. Why did everything suddenly look so hazy? That was the last thought she had, before the wind was knocked out of her. Her feet slipped and her arms flailed against the breeze, desperate for something to grab onto. She kept falling and falling. Only one thing going through her mind. Damn rabbit's fault. She was about to die.